My name is Howard Twine. I'm the Senior Sales Manager at Vidcheck. I'm just going to be talking to you about, from a UK company perspective, how you can set up a self-sustaining environment outside of the UK from a sales point of view. I'm just going to run through a few sort of outlines here by way of an introduction as to who we are, who I am, what we do, and talk about the local partnerships, how to form a local partnership, some of the sort of indicators that you can use to measure performance with some of those local partners, how you can build and turn that sort of local partnership into something that's giving you local support, and also a slightly different angle, which is to look at the product management and marketing for your particular company and your products within that particular market. So, brief introduction. As I said, my name's Howard Twine. I'm the Senior Sales Manager at Vidcheck. I joined Vidcheck about a year ago and have spent pretty much the last 10 months working on developing the US market in particular for Vidcheck. So what I'm talking about here is going to be mainly based on the experiences that I've had in the US, but in many respects this can be applied from a global point of view. So Vidcheck is a privately owned company, UK-based. We've been trading for about 5 years. We provide a software solution which is for the automatic quality control of file-based media. So we occupy this market pretty much exclusively for the testing and also automatic correction of video and audio content within the industry. It's purely a software solution, and we provide people with an agnostic platform that they can run that software on. We've shown tremendous growth actually over the last 12 months or so as a result of the UK Digital Production Partnership, the consortium of many UK broadcasters to standardise on the format of content delivery into those broadcasters. So, that's the introduction. How do you form a local partnership outside of the UK? And certainly for some UK-based companies, when you look at other certain markets, the US or North America as a whole, it can seem actually very, vast. So, there's a few ways that you can start the ball rolling, working with master distributors and representatives. There are companies in the US that will claim to give you, massive growth in revenue, X, Y, Z. And my advice when, engaging with any of these people with a view to developing your own business, regardless of what your solution is to be incredibly choosy and be very, very cynical about the promised growth they will claim. And in being choosy and making those decisions to partner with those people, I would always recommend standardizing the search criteria that you're using when talking to potential resellers or people that are going to represent your products. It might sound a bit obvious, but if you use and standardize the kind of thing that you would expect them to do, whether it's outbound marketing, whether it's cold calling, knocking on doors, if you agree yourself on a set of criteria that you want them to work to, then you can take that model and you can take it to different regions within country, you can take it to different markets. And as you'll see further on this presentation, that will help you monitor the performance of these sort of resellers and that overall channel. Talk to your peers. From a vendor's point of view, there are plenty of people at trade shows like BVE here, NAB in the US, IBC. We've all got stories, we've all had experiences of trying to break into new markets, and that peer experience is very valuable. It's not necessarily the kind of one-size-fits-all sort of model, and one vendor's experience may not necessarily fit in with your product, your offering. Some people prefer a distribution model of sales channel where you actually have a representation by that distributor. and that they take the orders, they process the orders on your behalf, and they take the financial risk in all of that. Or there's, of course, the rep model, taking an approach with a sales representative who will knock on doors, pound the streets on your behalf. He'll get the order will be placed with you directly, so he's not taking any financial risk. And again, depending on how you want to tackle this, depending on the type of product that you have, these models may suit accordingly. And don't be afraid to have more than one reseller. Certainly, the thing that I've experienced in the United States, and particularly in California, because LA is such a vast sprawl compared to, from a European perspective, LA can mean everything from the Hollywood Hills down to Burbank, right down to, Santa Monica and so on. And in that kind of landscape, you can't have one representative, you can't have one reseller that will do your product justice. As the folks in Santa Monica, funnily enough, they'll buy from people in Santa Monica. People buy from people and they buy locally. Whereas in New York, everything is much more compact. It's an entirely different sort of ecosystem. So, again, don't be afraid to have more than one reseller, even in the same region. And in many respects, there are different verticals of the market. One person may have good broadcast relationships that are talking to the networks, and somebody else may have a better relationship with the post-production community. And again, there may not necessarily be any overlap between. In terms of creating that virtual presence for your company and for your product you're offering, there will be, as you start to develop, there will be differences between the performance of certain resellers, certain channels. And some of them get the product, some of them sadly don't. So, in that respect, single out those ones that are good and have the patience and invest in training for those particular resellers or representatives, because over time, their confidence in the product will grow, the revenue will start to grow, and as that sort of symbiotic relationship starts to develop further, then you're going to be in a situation where potentially they can offer you a virtual presence in that they can start to pick up the phone and answer it as your company name, and you start to build a sort of a more realistic shop window within that environment. I'll come on to that in a little bit more from a support point of view. It's vital that you monitor the performance and constantly keep an eye on the performance of resellers. Within your staff of an organisation, you do regular reviews on staff. Well, I hope you do anyway, because if you don't know that you can't tell them that what they're doing is good, and they can't tell you that what you're doing is bad or good or whatever. So why shouldn't you take that same approach when dealing with resellers? And if you've invested that time and effort on the training that you've given them to represent your product properly, then you can start to form that into what was the training curriculum. You can start to turn that into a performance monitoring sort of score sheet type thing. And from that, you can maintain and make sure that your product and your company, your brand, most importantly, is being represented correctly within that region. And the net result of that is that the phone rings. Sadly, it's all too often that we hear of resellers and distributors across multiple regions throughout the world. They pick up brands. So I call them stamp collectors, because sometimes you look at these people's websites, on other countries, and all you see is just page after page of company logos. They just, oh yes, look, I've got 750 companies. Yeah, great. Do you know what any of them do? Oh no, but I've got their logos on my website. Excellent. So, again, that's not going to make the phone ring. And if you're like we are, an expanding, growing company in certain countries, nobody's ever heard of us, and it's vital that we're working with people that are going to make the phone ring. And at that whole outbound marketing thing, is absolutely vital. And that in turn will breed a sales pipeline. And if you can't look and you can't sit down with a reseller, distributor, or somebody like that and say, right, what are the opportunities you've got for the next 30 days? Beyond that, what have you got for the next 60 and 90? And it doesn't matter whether it's a hardware-based solution, whether it's a software-based solution. If they can't tell you what opportunities they're working on, then you've got to ask yourself, are you really working with the right person? So assuming you are working with the right person and assuming that things, are developing nicely, then one of the things they can, of course, provide you is local support. The ability to take and deal with first line, what I would call first line support issues, which is, it's broken, how do I, where do I start, where do I go? Now with software that's easy, and it's all too easy, isn't it? We've seen it so many times with software solutions. You get this email thing back and forth, and if you're dealing with somebody on the west coast of the United States, that back and forth process for 6 questions can last more than a week, and the customer solution still hasn't been fixed. And part of the problem with that is that people, almost shy away from actually putting a human being in front of a customer from a support point of view and making that human visible to them. You'd be surprised, well, maybe you're not surprised, but it's certainly, it never ceases to amaze me the number of US operations that don't have the ability to dial internationally. And if you're a UK company providing support from the UK, there's a fundamental problem. They can't pick up the phone and call you. Now, on a negative side, of course, that stops them from picking the phone up and shouting at you when it's all gone wrong. But equally so, it does get in the way of customer service. So in that respect, having a human that's maybe part of your reseller channel that has the ability to solve very simple first-line problems, but equally so can act as a conduit between that reseller channel, that customer, and you, the manufacturer, and can provide local knowledge and insight and help perhaps translate some of the language that customer's using, put into context what it is they're trying to achieve, and understand what they're doing. That can be really, really valuable. And it can be valuable not just from a support point of view, but also from a product management and marketing point of view. Now, these people are, resellers can help you tremendously in terms of understanding the landscape, especially if it's a market that you've not worked in before. And it's, it's very easy to sort of understate the knowledge of that market, but it's vital to know it in the respect that, you can go to market with what you think is the next best thing. And in our case, at Vidcheck, we've had great success with the DPP here in the UK. Go over to the United States, nobody's heard of the DPP. It means nothing to them. We do testing for photosensitive epilepsy, a legal requirement for UK broadcasters. Go over to the United States, what's photosensitive epilepsy? Never heard of it. So what was perceived as is known and understood for us as as an opportunity here and a competitive advantage, actually, it does you no favours at all. In fact, it can turn people off. But start talking to them about things that are relevant to them. And in this same vein, in the US, they have this ATSC CALM compliance to do with audio loudness for commercials. And if your product can help them do that, then you're onto a winner. And if you know and understand that landscape, then when you sit down and talk to opportunities, obviously, you're coming from an informed perspective. And most importantly, your product has been adapted to fit that market requirement. Obviously, do your research. Look at your competitors. How strong are they? Now, if they've got, development facilities or, a presence in country, then yes, you are going to be at a disadvantage. But by looking at what they're doing and how they place their product, that can give you a leg up. And don't be afraid to plagiarize it. That's the best form of a compliment, isn't it, in many respects? But don't take it too far. And if you do a SWOT analysis of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, if you analyse that and you're honest with it, and that's one of the key things is honesty and being brutal with it. Don't put yourself down too much, but be honest with it. It can that can evolve into something quite useful. Certainly when it comes to not just selling your product, but also putting feedback into your product roadmap and guiding your development. And of course, it goes without saying, listen to your customers. But the number of times as a former product manager, I've seen the not invented here syndrome kick in when you come back from having visited a customer and said, yes, we can sell 500 of these things if we did them in blue. And your annual sort of output is something like 250. So you're going to double your output on one sale alone if you make it in blue. And you get the developer turn around and say, didn't design it for blue. Don't like that. Don't like blue. I want green. Everybody should be using green. And funnily enough, I genuinely have been in that situation. And funnily enough, it was actually to do with MXF. And the developer looked at me and said, nobody's going to use MXF. Nobody's going to adopt that in this industry. Sadly, the company that was concerned there that I was working for, they no longer exist. And they no longer exist for a reason, because they stuck their head in the sand. They didn't sit down and ask the customer why it was important to them, why they wanted to do it. So, in that respect, that picture does tell 1,000 stories.